Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Educated Call Snap channel. How you doing? So, probably as you know, today we're going to be talking about suggestions for the Spotlight system. Overall, it has been a decent amount of time, I think, for players to really have a feel of the system, have some ideas, and I just wanted to kind of talk about some of the suggestions and overall thoughts on the system and the changes now that time has passed and we can kind of settle down and see what we're looking. So I've actually already talked about some of my suggestions, but I'd put it at the end of an hour plus long video, so I'm not surprised that not a lot of people saw that. So I'm definitely going to have it be its own video, its own separate section, and stand on itself, as well as I do now have more suggestions now due to having time and really diving into the system. Before, I hadn't really, the system wasn't out yet when I made those suggestions. So some of them do stand the test of time, but still have some more adjustments to be made. Now, overall, in terms of the system, I do think the system has potential. It's not bad in that way, but there are just some major flaws, I think, at the moment that kind of make it feel frustrating for some percentage of players, which definitely matters. So on average, players are getting more cards, which at the end of the day, that's the really only thing that matters. If you want to put it like that, you get more cards than normal. And that's really a critical thing that does give the system potential. It is true that more people are getting more cards overall. There are definitely a decent amount of generic downsides. You lose out on control and agency. So tokens are really good in making sure you got to choose what card you want when you want them at what point with the pinning system, right? So you do lose out on that level of control, that level of agency, that level of reactability to patches. That's something you do lose in the Spotlight system. The cards you're getting is mostly determined by second dinner, which honestly I don't like. I definitely like choosing the cards I want, but it is something to be aware of that second dinner is making those caches. They're not randomly determined or anything like that. So the cards you are getting are pretty much picked by second dinner. So that can be, depending on what cards are picked, a benefit or a negative. The series drop frequency and quality is suffering as a result. Now, they have said they need to have a large bank of cards to be available that are enticing to players. So right now, it's hard to do series drops because they want to have a large enough pool of cards that people want to push for. But players were very much used to series drops, so it just feels bad for players in this way during this transition period while they're banking up a large amount of playable and enticing cards. So definitely a negative. Then there's also less potential for dopamine hits. So generally, when you're opening your collector's caches, there was a chance to get a Series 4. There was a chance very low, but there was a chance to get a Series 5. And that kind of thing did give players that dopamine hit, that rush of, oh, wow, I got something cool here. Also, there's less tokens. I would argue that the large amount of tokens was also a dopamine hit, and the gold as well could be dopamine hits. So there's just less potential for that, less potential for people to really be enticed or rewarded to open up their caches, which is a little bit of a disappointment. And then the main thing, there was like no discussion for feedback before the system was implemented. So other big system changes, there was always feedback from the players, and there is feedback now, but because secondary did go on their break right before the system was implemented, it didn't really give people time to really have a back and forth with second dinner before this change was implemented, and maybe some of the pitfalls that currently exist with the system could have been avoided with a little bit more community discussion. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but once again, those are like the initial thoughts. Here we go in the actual suggestions. This is some of the stuff I think could have been implemented. Some of them I have already talked about if you watched that hour-long video, but I'm assuming most people didn't. First thing is still I still think the ability to pin a spotlight cache would be very useful. So you do currently have a week to get those 4 or variants in those spotlight reserve systems, and then once that week is over, it's done. But I really think that the ability to pin it would help because this system is basically replacing tokens mostly, but tokens have that flexibility of being able to pin so you can get them at your own time. There's still people pinning random, Thanos or whatever they're looking for, just waiting until they have their enough resources. And I really think you should have that ability to give to the spotlight caches where, let's say they were looking for Gene and they opened 3 and the Gene was the last one, right? If they really want Gene, they should be able to just say, okay, I'm going to stick here until I get that Gene. Then I will unpin it, move it to the next week or whatever week they're at now. So I think that would just help because it does feel bad if you were looking for the new card like Echo. You open 3 because that's all you saved, and then Echo's the last one, and you just don't have time to farm for that last spotlight cache. It just feels really awful. So just thinking being able to pin would just help with that frustration. And you really want to remove that frustration from players. Any way where people can't guarantee the card they want just feels very bad. And I just think being able to pin would just say, okay, you wanted this card, you got unlucky, it was the 4th one or the 3rd one, whatever. You can guarantee it. Just pin it, wait for the next set of caches to farm, and then you can go. So that's something I would really like to see. Next up would be monthly community in-game spotlight events. Now what this means is just an event section where every month players could vote for one new card to be in that spotlight reserve section. Preferably it fits perfectly into that first week where there's no new new card spotlight, right? Since the first week is a season pass week and the season pass of the old month is not going directly there. So there's a clear place for it. And I just think it would help kind of give the players more agency. Obviously, you're not going to have like the most popular card picked. So like once it's picked, it's going to be removed from the next month pools for maybe like 1 or 2 months so that you can't pick it again. But it would just give some players be like, oh, the community as a whole really wants Jeff, which is what it is for the next one. But it'd just be cool to have that camaraderie of like, oh, the community's choosing something and it's going to be picked into the system. So I think that would just help give some players some agency. Like, oh, people really want, I don't know, what's a popular card? It's Jeff. So that would just help just give them like some tools to be like, oh yeah, you guys can choose, and this would be in the first week of the spotlight system every time, and every week or every month it changes based on the community sentiment. So that I think would be cool. Next up is I still think Series 4 cards should be obtainable through reserves. Now, I thought about this for a while, and I just think that there's not really that much excitement for the reserves right now. A lot of people really value the ability of randomly getting a new card, right? As you're opening your reserves, oh wow, I got this new Series 4 card. Series 5 cards are really not that obtainable, so I don't mind them staying in its own separate spotlight system, but I just think there needs to be the potential of dopamine hits in this regular reserve system to just encourage people to open them up. Right now, 50 tokens is not doing anything for people, and avatars and titles are not doing anything for people. And you just need to bring back some of that excitement, and just allowing Series 4 cards to be obtainable does help, as well as the Series 4 cards being obtainable 1 a month is something that I really don't think is like fully calculated into that spotlight reserve system, right? We do talk about, oh, we're getting more new cards, but some of the stuff we have given up, I would say, is this free Series 4 card that we're guaranteed to get, and also the series drops that made Series 4 cards particularly free. Those are some of the things we're giving up. So we do want to address that it's not always everything is great, like in terms of the progression. There are some things that we have given up. And I do think just allowing Series 4 cards to be back in would just say, hey, you're not losing everything. You're getting some of your rewards back there. So that's something. And it's just a way of making the regular reserves feel pretty good again. Because right now, I wouldn't say it's the most rewarding use of your resources to just open them up. So that's something I would do. On that same vein, I would also just put the 50 token kickback up to 100. I just don't think it's worth a negative sentiment, especially when players are used to 200 to 600 tokens, 100 generally. But I just think this 50 tokens is just too slow for players to feel good about. It's not rewarding, doesn't feel great. It's going to take, with this current system, 7.5 months as a Series 3 complete player to get a new Series 5 card. Significantly more if you're not a Series 3 complete player. But waiting almost 8 months to be able to pick a Series 5 card you're choosing is just not reasonable, I would say, for loyal players, because these are the players that are playing consistently daily during their quests and getting a lot of progression. Taking 7 to 5 months to get a new Series 5 card is just like, what is that, right? What is that? And if you just make it 100 tokens to 50 tokens, you're not adding that much tokens back into the pool. It's going to be an extra 400 to 800 tokens a month, depending on whether you're Series 3 complete or not, which is an extra 4,800 to 9,600 extra tokens a year for players. So for Series 3 complete players, you're adding maybe 1.5 extra cards through tokens that they're getting a year. It's really not that much. And the price of not doing this is just the negative sentiment, right? I look through the Reddit threads, I look through the Discord threads, I look through my Discord, and I stream, so I also get the sentiment through there. And I just hear a lot of people not happy about this 50 tokens reward structure. It just doesn't feel good, and players are just used to much more than that. So giving them something back just helps feel like you care, feel like you're listening, and it's not that much of a reward. Like 100 tokens to 50 is not that much. But it would just help with the sentiment. So that's just something I would add back in, and see how the players feel from there. Next up we have is committing to series drops every month. So I just think there should be something dropping every month, even if it's just 1 or 2 cards. Something should drop. An aspect of the game that was helpful was that you always got to, something new becomes free. Something new becomes like available in the global pool, and you can always start pursuing that. So you don't have to worry that, oh, some cards are, or cards are going to be locked for a long time. So even though you currently right now aren't dropping because you need a larger pool of Series 4 and Series 5 cards that are rewarding, it's still okay to drop something, right? Even before we were dropping 8+ cards, 7, 8+ cards, it's fine to drop 1 or 2. But at least always drop something. It just feels scary if you never know if anything will drop, right? And another aspect is the choose your card Series 3 rewards. For Series 3 complete players, we were able to rely on being able to use that at least, right? Once something drops. But now with this system, a month can pass without anything dropping, and you don't get to use that feature. So it just feels weird to have that feature that can be completely ignored for a large percentage of players if you drop nothing. So I would just commit to dropping something, even if it's not as much as it used to be. It's just always good to make sure that something is moving down. And there are still a lot of targets that you could do. There is definitely some cards that don't feel particularly enticing, that don't feel like they deserve the Series 4, Series 5 tag. that could definitely move down. So always a kick in the, always feels bad if you get the random series 4 series 5 or random 4 series, yeah, and it's a card isn't doing particularly well in the meta. So I do think just committing to some drops would feel good and would give some players more confidence. Now, if you still don't want to do that, if you still want to keep everything series 4, series 5, don't drop, then give another reward. Say, okay, guys, we are not dropping anything this month, but we're giving you, 1,000 gold, 1,000 tokens, something. Give players some other reward to make it feel like they're not being slapped here, right? Just if they're not getting to use their free monthly card, which was 3,000 tokens, then give everyone, 3,000 tokens. Give everyone some gold so that they don't feel like they're losing out that month. So if you just need to build a stockpile of enticing cards, then just give players something else instead. That'll appease them while you are working on that, right? If you're saying, hey, no series drops and you get nothing from us, like it's it's just not something I think the players will respond positively to. So just anytime, like this is just common game etiquette, right? Let's say your server goes down, right? What happens? You say, oh, guys, sorry, the server went down. Here's some rewards, right? Same thing with series drops. Oh, sorry, no series drops this month. Here's some rewards. It's the same philosophy, and it just appeases people from just getting angry. So this is something I would just do. Next up would be just instead of having people have spotlight caches that they have to save up, just make like a spotlight resource. So like a spotlight token where you open up your spotlight caches and you get a spotlight token, spotlight resource that you can use. It's much easier to track. It's much easier to save. It's much easier to redeem. And when I'm looking through my collection track, I just have like random spotlights that I have to like hold, right? And I start at the lowest one, then I have to scroll up to the next one, then I have to scroll up to the next one. It's just like not pleasant from a UI perspective. So I would just add a resource for Spotlight so that you could just see, oh, you have 4 Spotlight resources. Here you go. Now you can just open all 4 if you want to. And then I would just give people some, like a Spotlight token per month. Just give them an extra one. Sure, you've calculated where it's 4 a month. Make it 5. Like it's 4 to 5 depending on how like aggressive you use your credits, but just give them an extra one. I think that would also just help people. It's not that much of a pool, right? A lot of people have variants that are available that they want to get, and just giving them an extra one per month I don't think is too harsh or too much resources that you're giving players for free. I think it's fine. So that was something I would be looking into, just making the UI cleaner, but also throw in a little extra bonus for players. Next up, we're gonna dive deep about the random series 4 series 5 option. I think that option is by far the worst one, just not giving players anything they want. It's not that it's bad, it's just whiffing sucks really bad, really hard. Like if you don't get a new card, then the alternative of getting a variant, especially if it's a 700 gold variant, is just frustrating for players because players are using their resources like they're using tokens. And if you were like, oh, you can spend 1,000 tokens and instead of getting a card, sometimes you'll get a variant. Like no one's going to agree to that, but that's essentially what the system does. And it's something you want to avoid. You don't want the floor to be particularly bad, right? You want the floor to be okay and then the ceiling to be as good as reasonably possible, right? From how much you're willing to give. But one thing I would do, you guys talk about how you don't want there to be duplicate protection because it would just help everyone, honestly, but it would really help the people that already have a lot of cards, right? So I understand that, but I still think the current structure is too punishing. And I would just try to limit the likelihood for that structure to just screw people over and make them mad and not happy with the system. So I wouldn't add duplicate protection, not because it's bad for players or anything like that, but I do understand um, the rationale of making sure that it's not too easy for people that already have everything. But something I would do is make it a little bit better, give people more safety nets. And one thing I would do is just add the ability to choose from three. Instead of currently what happens is if you hit the random Series 4, Series 5, it picks a random Series 4, Series 5 out of all in the pool. And then if you have it, you'll get a variant. Instead, I would pick three. I would showcase three random Series 4, Series 5s, and then you have the option of picking one of the three. Now, that still would be pretty bad for players that have everything because they're still not going to. The likelihood they get something new from that three is still pretty low. But for new players, for players that don't have a lot of Series 4, Series 5, this helps them tremendously, right? There's going to be a very high likelihood one of the three random is something they don't own, and then the likelihood they whiff just drops down. The likelihood to get a variant drops down, and it's a lot better for mostly the new players, but even it's still a benefit for players with larger collections. So that's something I would do. I think overall it would help people feel less frustrated about whiffing, but it still doesn't give that full duplicate protection that you really want to avoid. Now, I would still rework missing on the Series 4, Series 5 slot. So missing is hitting a variant, right? I still think that isn't friendly, isn't helpful, and I would just still give the variant if that's what you're gonna do, but I would give an extra resource on top. So something like 1,000 tokens. When I suggested this last time, I added credits on top, but I feel that that's less elegant than just giving tokens and seeing if that feels better. So something like 1,000 tokens, if you get a variant, is good because variants aren't really worth anything in terms of progression. Let's be honest, they're not. They just look cool, but they don't help you get any cards. So I would just add some resources back into the players that didn't get a new card that they wanted. So you're on average getting 4 reserves per month, which is on average you're getting one of these per month. So you're just adding a little bit of tokens back, and that's only if you whiff, right? If you get a new card there, then you're not getting the tokens. But for players, I just think this would help them feel a little bit better about the system and just make it feel more rewarding for the people that get unlucky in that particular selection. Next up, now I still like this as well. If you do hit a variant, it should be 1,200 variants. Now, not because 1,200 variants are better than 700 variants. They're all subjective. It doesn't really matter. But what is currently the case is 700 gold variants are already obtainable through other free-to-play methods. So we have... I don't really buy variants in the shop, right? It doesn't help me with progression. I don't really buy them. But I do have a lot of decent variants because you are getting them through the season pass. You're getting them through the season pass plus 50 caches. Sometimes it's like low percentage, but it's there. You are getting them through conquest rewards. You're getting them through ranked rewards. You're getting them generically. Sometimes you give out variants in the inboxes as well, right? So it's already available. Getting 700 gold variants are already available, right? And since duplicate protection is not available, at least making the variants that you're getting through the spotlight system rarer would at least give the rewards some meaning, right? So if they were only limited to 1,200 gold variants, then at least you're getting a variant that you couldn't have gotten anywhere else. So it just doesn't feel bad it wouldn't feel as bad. Not that it wouldn't feel bad, but it wouldn't feel as bad to get that variant because at least it's something unique that you can't really get as a free-to-play player anywhere else. So I would still just remove the 700 gold variants, not for premium mystery variants generically. That one I haven't really discussed. I'm not really focused on that. But just for the spotlight, random Series 4, Series 5 whiffs where you don't get a new card, at least make it a 1200 gold variant is the idea there, if available. If there's no 1200 gold variants, then sure, right? Then whatever. Like at least have a fallback, right? So the 700 could be a fallback if you don't have any. But if it is available, definitely should focus on that. Now, another thing for that is that the Spotlight Premium Mystery variants should also prioritize the pick card. So right now, if you get a card that you already own, like you already own Kang and you get Kang, not do the variants. I should have picked a different card. Like you already own Hitmonkey and you hit Hitmonkey, it will convert to a random card that you own, right? It doesn't have to be a Series 4 card, doesn't have to be a Series 5 card. So you could get Misty Knight, you could get Quicksilver, whatever. And I assumed myself, right? I assumed that the variant that you were going to get was going to be the variant of the card that was chosen, right? So let's say the Hitmonkey, you would get a Hitmonkey variant. But that's not the case, right? You just get a random variant of a card you own. And I really think it would be nice to get variants of a card that's picked, because it's not likely that the random variant you get is going to be a card that you play and the card that you want. And it does feel like a lot of the Series 4, Series 5 cards are enticing, right? Especially the ones that you were promoting in the Spotlight system, but you do have variants for that. But the ones that you're playing or the ones that you get, it should be like, oh, I'm going to be playing these cards because they're new, they're exciting, and I'm getting a variant for them. So it's supposed to feel like a reward. And if you, let's say, combine with the discover potential, right? Let's say you discover 3 cards and one is Darkhawk, right? And you don't have a Darkhawk variant, right? Then instead of going for the new card, now you have that chance of saying, oh, I really love Darkhawk. It's my favorite card. Let me pick that even though I already own it because I want to get a fancy variant of it, right? And that's something that I really think could feel rewarding to players. And even if they could have gotten a new card, they might like a particular card. Like let's say they get Jeff and they already own Jeff. They pick Jeff anyways to get the variant of a Jeff. So I think there's definitely some power there in making sure the card that they pick is the card they want. This really works well if you get the Discover 3 effect on top, right? Like then you get 3 cards to choose and you could pick what variant you want for that particular card. I think that would feel rewarding for players. So, but generally, regardless, I do think if Spotlight variants are picking a random card, the variant you should get should be of that card that is picked, right? So it's weird to get like Angela variant when you're not really playing Bouncer or whatever, like anything like that. For your Spotlight variants, generally it's fine. All right. Now next up we have, I know there's a lot of suggestions. I hear you. I've thought about this. Next up we have monthly gold for opening regular caches. So a monthly reward of gold for opening regular caches. So this is like once per season. It's a reward for opening the regular caches during the season, I guess, with gold reward. So this is just a way to encourage players not to hold their regular caches, because currently, right now, there's a lot of people just talking about hoarding their regular caches because they don't find any meaning in opening them right now. If you combine this with the increased token value, you combine this with the ability to get Series 4s back in these regular caches, and then you give people an incentive to open the caches, I think you'll really have a lot less people just encouraged to hoard like that. So it's just giving players back some of their lost gold through the new system in a meaningful way that just encourages players to do what Second Dinner wants, which is to open up their caches, So obviously the numbers need to be tweaked a bit, right? This is just an example, but like let's say you open 20 regular reserves and that will grant you 500 gold once per season, right? Something like that, right? And I think that would just help encourage the behavior the Second Dinner wants to encourage, right? Which is not hoarding these random caches, opening up, getting some rewards. So that's something I think would help in that way. Obviously, you have to figure out what number makes sense in terms of how much resources people are getting. People are getting like what 30 something regular reserves a month, so maybe the number could be higher. But regardless, like that's the idea. And then I believe the final suggestion, whoopsie, is to not roll caches. So I've talked about this already, but Secondary has still talked about making sure that making sure that the caches could be locked when you unlock them, could be rolled when you unlock them, so you always know what's in there. I guess that doesn't matter as much with the new system, since the spotlights, I assume the spotlights will not be rolled when you unlock them, so that one will not matter as much. But for those older regular reserves, I still think it's better to not roll them. Honestly, now that I'm talking about it, as long as the spotlight caches are not rolled, then it's fine, right? Like, cause yeah, that would be pretty bad. But as long, like, the regular reserves could be rolled theoretically, but as long as the spotlight caches are not rolled, then it's fine. So as long as you're not rolling the spotlight caches, that's fine. But if you do that, that's a big boo boo, right? But yeah, so that as long as you're not hitting the spotlight caches, this is fine. So this is like not as important now with the new system, actually. But still, yeah, it's still something to keep in mind, I would say. Now, I do have a couple of reminders. This is not really for players. This is really more for secondary if they do happen to stumble across this video. Obviously, I don't know if they're gonna get this far, but I still want to just talk about some things to just reminders in that aspect. First thing is that the token shop is still very important, right? So they have talked about the token shop is secondary now. It's not as important, and people should just focus on the spotlight system to get the cards they want. But I still think the token shop still is pretty important in that it gives agency to the players in reacting to meta changes and patch changes in the game. So let's say a card gets buffed and nerfed and a new meta deck is created, while the token shop allows players to react and get the cards they need to play at a high level. Some good example is the Living Tribunal buff that just came out, right? If players skip the last reserve because Living Tribunal was a 6/6, not playable, he's seen in no meta decks, and now with this change, maybe it's seen in a couple meta decks, well, you've lost your opportunity to get Living Tribunal because it was in the last spotlight, and you're going to have to wait multiple months before it rolls again. And it's going to take you, what, 7.5 months to get a new Series 5 card? That's not very likely that you're going to use that on Living Tribunal. So the token stop is still very important, still a critical feature to be utilized. And I think letting that be secondary and go to the wayside is just a big disservice to the player. So that's something I would say a good reminder to still have. Next up is that same thing, the nerf buff cycle just makes spotlight decisions risky, right? So deciding to skip on the spotlight because a card does not appeal to you and then it gets buffed or nerfed is really difficult to defend, right? It's hard for you to defend the system because the likelihood that you're going to get that token drops dramatically. You can't really say, oh yeah, the card you bought, you know, let's say Echo gets nerfed, right? It's too broken, it gets nerfed, right? You're like, oh, it's just unlucky that you use your spotlights on Echo, right? Like it's not okay to have a system where, oh, your decisions can just be destroyed like that, and especially with how long it takes to save up for some of these cards. And it's just hard to be super confident. Like if a card feels super strong coming out and you use all your spotlights on it and then it just gets nerfed like the week after, it's just gonna be very, very frustrating for players. So it's just something to keep in mind, something to remind secondary that even though yes, you're getting 4 caches a week or 4 caches a month and you are able to get new cards, those decisions do matter a lot, and things can change to no fault of the player's own and make their decisions feel pretty bad. So you just have to be careful about that kind of thing. All right, next thing is that the floor needs to be higher Spotlight caches should not feel like Danger Room. So a large amount of players are casuals, right? And they just open everything when they get it. And in that percentage of players, some will hit random Series 4, Series 5 slots every time, and they're going to whiff every time. Some percentage of players are going to hit Series 4 every time, every week, every month. They open one a week. They're going to hit Series 4, 5 every week, and they're going to have the card already every week, and they're just going to get random variants for the month. And that should really never happen, honestly, right? Because the Spotlight caches are essentially tokens in how they perform. And there's going to be some players that use their resources, use their tokens, and they just have 4 variants to show for it. Like it's not something that should be possible for players, right? And there's a large amount of people playing the game. So there's going to be some people that this happens to. And those people will be very frustrated. Those people will be very annoyed. And that shouldn't be possible. The floor of Spotlight caches should not be that you get nothing for a month. The floor of Spotlight caches should be like you get something, you get a new card, whatever it is. There should be a much higher floor. The ceiling right now is pretty good. You can get 4 new cards instead of 1 or 2, which is what you get normally. So the ceiling is pretty good, but the floor could be atrocious, and that should be improved. I would say with the Discover effect, where you're getting 1 out of 3, you get to choose from 1 out of 3. I would say that would raise the floor quite a bit, as well as whiffing. If you whiff, you get 1,000 tokens or something like that. That once again would raise the floor. So if you whiff 4 times, you get like 4,000 tokens or something, which is honestly not that good, but but still, it's something. So I would just make sure that the floor feels higher. Some of the changes that I've already talked about would address that, but obviously, I don't think they're gonna look at my video and then make every change, like right. So I would just this is just some reminders for Spotlight, and like, hey, shouldn't be like Danger Room where there's a 25% chance of having your tokens destroyed, right? So just something as a reminder for secondary to have. And then once again, another reminder: collectors reserves should feel rewarding. They have to feel rewarding because a lot of the reserve system, the old collector system, was just giving people dopamine hits, right? They open something, you get 600 tokens. They open something, you get gold. They open something, they get a title. But then they ignore that, and then they open another one, they get a new card, right? So there's a lot of ways to get dopamine in that system. And with this Spotlight collector system, a lot of that has been moved to the Spotlight system. So the dopamine hits are now in the Spotlight system, where you open a card. Did you get the card you want? No. Open another. Did you get the card you want? You did. Yeah. So in the old system, right, a lot of the rewards were kind of similar to that new card feeling or a big hit of resources. But at the moment, there's not that many meaningful rewards to open through the collector's reserves. And the 50 token hit is like the opposite of a dopamine hit, whatever that is, right? It's like, oh my god, right? What is this, right? So a lot of that excitement has been moved to other systems or taken away from players. So it's just a reminder that the collector's reserves are things people are going to be opening often, right? They're going to be something that players are looking forward to opening often, and they have to feel rewarding. Where the Spotlight cache is the Spotlight token system, it's something that they're saving up for a special occasion when they see a set of cards they really want or a variant they really want, right? Then they use it for that. So it's just something to be reminded of, just making sure that those reserves feel rewarding. And then next up, Series 3 incomplete players are still suffering. So this is something that I always like keeping track of, making sure that I'm not only looking at the Series 3 complete players mindset. So they are now receiving less Series 3 cards per regular caches. It used to be 9 per set, and now it's 9 per month. Now it's 8 per month, right? And then the 1,000 tokens for a random Series 3 card is now extremely expensive to consistently push for. You can't really get 1,000 tokens through the collector's track per month anymore. You'd have to rely on other ways of getting tokens. So that's a little bit unfortunate there. And right now, I checked. It takes 11 months of consistently playing to get the full collection. So if you start out with no Series 3 cards, it will take you 11 months. So far, like it's gonna get bigger, of course, right? But it will take you like a year of consistently playing to get the full collection if you don't have any Series 3 cards right now. And that can be rough if you're missing many of the premium Series 3 stables. A lot of decks are just Series 3 cards and some other, maybe one Series 4, Series 5 to supplement, and maybe a couple of the earlier game cards. But a lot of decks are just a lot of Series 3 cards. So it can definitely suck if you're missing a premium or really important core one. So it's just something to keep in mind, that you have to care about the Series 3 incomplete players. And I don't think personally that 11 months of consistently playing to get the full collection is that reasonable here. And then I believe the last suggestion or last reminder is that Marvel Snap is not a job, and players should not have to calculate and optimize for months to get the rewards they want. And it should not be it shouldn't be the case that you can't see the benefits of a system at a glance. The game is fun, the base game is fun, and everything, but the monetization and reward structure is a little bit convoluted, and I shouldn't really have to make like hour-long videos explaining it. It's just like, why is it like that? So I would just say, you shouldn't make the players feel like they're working the system. You shouldn't make the players feel bad for optimizing or working the system. That double dip comment and stuff is a bit weird when I read it. Like, oh, I'm just trying to play the game with the resources I have, with the strategies that are available to me to get the best out of it, right? And really shouldn't. It should just be a fun, casual mobile game that players are using to rewind, to relax, and just have a good end of their day or whatever they're doing it for. But overall, that's my thoughts on the suggestions. I know it's kind of long, but I looked through and just thought about, what are all these things that I think could just make the game feel better, make it feel more rewarding. Hope you guys like some of the suggestions. Obviously, not everyone's going to be in full agreement with all the changes, but those are some of the things I would be looking at initially to make the system feel better, feel more rewarding, and still be profitable for second dinner. I'm not ignoring that aspect of the monetization system. So that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoy it. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Educated calling snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you to Marvel Snap. Your skills will be improved.